So in light of recent events, it's really appropriate that Dr. Shakeshaft is here this evening. Dr. Charol Shakeshaft has been on the cutting edge of research considered by some, I suspect, as highly controversial and certainly gutsy by others. Dr. Shakeshaft's research exposes a frightening phenomena that by some standards seems near epidemic. Dr. Shakeshaft is a renowned educational researcher noted for her work on sexual abuse by school staff, and her findings, I suspect, will surprise you. Dr. Shakeshaft's research sheds light on the plight of students in the public school system. As an expert, she has appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show, PBS, and on THS Investigates. Dr. Shakeshaft received her Bachelor's of Science from the University of Nebraska and her Master's and Ph.D. from Texas A&M. She left Hofstra University in 2007 for Virginia Commonwealth University, where she currently serves as the department chairperson and professor of the Department of Educational Leadership School of Education. Tonight, Dr. Shakeshaft will be talking about educator misconduct and necessary policies. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shakeshaft.
Okay, according to my watch, we're supposed to be done with these talks by now so that we can open up the floor to discussion. So I do talk fast. I could just sum it up. People who are employed in schools sexually abuse kids. We don't do anything about it. Let's change that. All right. Whoops. Oh, you know, I said I'd do this. We have very little research on on sexual abuse of kids by people employed in schools. We don't track those numbers. We have really just one data set that we can use. We don't seem to care about tracking those numbers, although I'll point out we know exactly how many reindeer there are in Alaska. So what we do know is that from the one study we have, 9.6% of students report some form of sexual misconduct directed toward them, and about 8% both, and about 7%, 6.7%, have experienced physical sexual misconduct. Now I want to say a word about why I use the term misconduct. I just focus on schools. School people often, and I know you're out there so you can jump up and correct me, but school people sometimes object to calling acts sexual abuse that they consider to be sexual harassment, bad judgment, stupid behavior, and I'm a school person, just so you're clear, and so I've years ago put together the term educator sexual misconduct to say this: it's the educator who has the misconduct. It ranges from things that we don't want educators to do, but that are not criminal acts, to things that are criminal acts. But just because they're not criminal acts doesn't mean we want that teacher in the classroom doing them. So I want to encompass the range of things that we see in schools that are sexual in nature, from adults to kids, and so that's why I call it educator sexual misconduct. That little number that I pointed out is about 4.5 million kids are subjected to some form of sexual misconduct in our schools. While it's not the big numbers that you might see for parental or for other sexual abuse, it is a very large number of kids in our schools who are targets of sexual misconduct. Some of the offender patterns, and I'll just briefly talk about them, are that first, we don't have any data available about the number of school staff. We don't know how many teachers, how many adults sexually abuse kids. The reason we have kid data is because these are surveys of kids, asking them about things that have happened. We have none that about adults. There was an AP study that identified 2,570 teachers who lost their licenses, but remember, those are the ones that are brought forward. From the study we have of kids, it would appear that only about 11% of the kids actually report the abuse, and of those who report, a much, much smaller number, something happens to the teacher. So this would be a very low estimate if we were to try to figure it out. Of those who are offenders, 57% are males, 43% are females. I have to be honest, when I first started doing this work, which was by accident, because I teach school administrators, but many years ago someone asked me a question and there was no answer, and I decided to try to find it, and I'm still trying to find it. I would have been surprised at that 42.8% of abusers in schools. It's probably not, it isn't so surprising now that I know more, and remember, 75% of school employees are women. So 75% of school employees are women, and they account for 43% of the abuse. And 25% of school employees are men, and they account for 57% of the abuse. So it's important to look at also those balances there. We looked at, you know, the role that people play, and basically the major role are teachers and coaches. And I think you're getting this PowerPoint. So, and it's mainly people who have the opportunity to be alone with kids: music teachers, tutors, coaches, you know, kind of after-school supervisors. There's more abuse from those people in those roles than there are from people in other roles. The targets are slightly more likely to be female, disproportionately of African descent and Latino. Students with disabilities are very much represented as targets, and often vulnerable children who may come from unstable or dysfunctional contexts or families are overrepresented. Some patterns. At the elementary level, and this is important, this is just at the elementary level. At the elementary level, the offender is often an outstanding teacher. There's a disproportionate number of teacher awards among offenders. They've been best teacher of the year, best teacher of the state, best teacher here, best teacher there. And so people don't suspect that that teacher could do anything. And in fact, when an accusation is made, are often outraged that anyone would accuse this really great teacher. Now, in terms of the really great teacher, that teacher was a really great teacher probably to 98% of the kids that she or he served. So that 98% can't imagine that this really great teacher would do anything. But to the 2% of kids that that teacher sexually abused, that's not a really great teacher. There's a kind of a slow process of grooming and selection. We'll find that sometimes teachers start when the children are in their class in the 4th grade or 3rd grade and not act in a particularly direct sexual way until 6th grade. So, or start at the beginning of the year or over the summer. There's a lot of grooming and selection. There's a lot of, in working with offenders, a lot of asking kids questions and saying things like, and I'm focusing on elementary right now, I'm going to tell you something and you can't tell. It's really important that you don't tell. And then they say something silly like, you know, I really like green ties, or I like to eat candy in bed. Well, you know, and so they check and keep checking. And so the idea is to see who's not going to tell. There's a focus on types in the elementary level, not so much in the secondary. And fixated abusers are more likely in the elementary and early middle school. So those are abusers that we might call pedophiles. And they, as far as we can tell, are the majority at the early years of the sexual abusers. Not all of them are fixated abusers, but there are more there. In middle and upper levels, we find not so many fixated abusers, but rather opportunistic abusers who, you know, just take advantage of whatever comes along from the upper middle school to the and high school kids. So these may or may not be serial offenders. They're not necessarily seen as outstanding teachers. They don't specifically focus on a particular kind of children, and they do target the adolescents. They often go quicker. There's not as much planning. They're more easily identified and able to be, there's able to see where there could be an intervention. They're often teachers who are emotionally arrested. They're still in high school themselves emotionally. Teachers who have boundary issues and boundary problems, and teachers who may have, you know, loneliness at home, who may not have had a lot of friends, who, you know, there's all kinds of reasons. Or just plain teachers who want to have sex and they're happy to have it with whomever they can have it with, whenever, at any time. So that's that group. And those two groups are fairly different. In the grooming, and especially at the elementary level, there is a pattern, and this is mostly a male-to-male pattern, and it goes something like this. The abuser or the offender targets a vulnerable male, usually a male who's in a single-parent family, and the parent who's available is the female. Now, this is a female who's feeling guilty because her boy isn't getting a lot of the kind of male modeling that she hopes, because she doesn't have the dad there. And this feels really bad to her. And along comes this teacher who won the Outstanding Teacher of the Year award. And this teacher says to her, you know, Mrs. Smith, you know, I just want to say that your son is really extraordinary. I know he hasn't done well in school before, but really, I see an enormous amount of promise in this boy. He just needs some special help. I would just hate it if we didn't give it to him. And the mother's like, oh my gosh, thank you, you know, because somebody here who's this really great guy is going to help my child, going to help my boy. And so it starts with this kind of help from school, tutoring, and then it goes into, you know, checking with the mom, and then things like, you know, John mentioned he liked to go to baseball games. Do you like baseball games? And she says, no. And he says, you know what, I'll take him. I go every now and again. I'm happy to do that. Or he likes to go camping. I'll take him. In fact, before I started studying this, and I've looked at least 1,000 cases in schools, I never knew there were so many hunting lodges that people took children to. Hunting lodges, that's a big one. If somebody has a hunting lodge, fire them. No. And so there's trips, there's presents, and what the child gets, of course, which you know, is that they get attention, they get focused, they feel valuable, they feel important, they feel loved, and then they feel upset and confused, but still important and loved, and it's all very confusing for that child because this person has put enormous amount of energy into that child, grooming the child, getting the child to really care about him. We don't, despite Mary Lou or Mary Jo Latrina, we don't get as many female to male latrino, well, latrine, what is it? No. Okay, you know who it is. I just have a blank, I can't help it. It's just beyond my hope. But we don't see as many female to male in the elementary. We see lots of female to male in the middle and upper. In the study where we saw, 43% of the offenders were females, the majority of those were upper middle school to into high school. But there still are female to male in the elementary schools, and we've found very few. In fact, in the study we have, there was 0 number of female to female in the elementary level, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And then female, and then male to female. So it goes sort of in incidence, it's male to female, male to male, female to male, and female to female. And so we see some of those patterns happen with females. With females, they tend not to be the patterns where the adult male is asking the female to go to the baseball game. That more happens in school where, for instance, a really good first-chair flute player Stay after school, I'm going to help you with your work. Would you like to be my monitor, my classroom monitor? Do you want to help with the music? I need somebody to organize the music. Let me just come in and help you up with this. And so the patterns for those tend not to involve the parents so much when it's male to female in the elementary, but do have the child who in this case tends usually to be a female student who is outstanding in some way as well. So she may be the first chair flute, she may be really good at debating, she may be an excellent math student, but is shy or introverted, or may come from a family where there's dysfunction and she's not feeling all that good about herself, and it happens at school. And so it's all around the school happening. Other incidents, I've seen more than enough of the time when the teacher has a movie in the room and will go to the back of the room and the child sits on the teacher's lap and the teacher unzips his pants and pulls down the pants of the female child while the other children are watching the movie. This is not uncommon. Going into closets while the other children are working and saying, "Mary, come here." Incidents where boys know that the teacher's going to bring them up behind the desk to look at their paper and say, this is why I graded it this way, but in the meantime is putting the hand on the desk, touching the boy. And the boys say, "I'm not going close." They're aware of it. They try to avoid it. It's known, but they don't report it. However, anybody who had ears would hear the boys saying that in the hallway and other places and could put some things together and try to figure it out. Geography, that's what I say. It's in lots of places. Very often, it's, "I'm going to take you home from volleyball practice. Oh, wait a minute. I need to stop by my house and pick something up. Do you mind if we just stop? Oh, why don't you just, while I find it, why don't you just come in and have a Coke?" And then from there. Or for boys, why don't you come in and we can read magazines, watch videos, and have alcohol. That's just I'm talking fast to get done. Most sexual misconduct is not reported. When it's reported, it's often ignored. Informal channels are common. Somebody tells another teacher, and the other teacher doesn't report it on. Kids don't know who the person is they're supposed to tell. And one of the unfortunate laws or legal rulings is that if the child tells the wrong person, too bad, the school's not liable. Well, children don't know that you're supposed to tell the principal, or you're supposed to tell this person, not the teacher in the second grade. And so this is a real problem, because how's the kid supposed to know? The kid's told, thinks something's going to be done, and nothing does happen. False allegations are rare, despite what people say in the schools. Most teachers know how to deal with kids who might tell a lie. Bobby took my homework. I finished this. I deserved an A, not a B. We know how to do that. And so any allegation that's made is not well enough made to be upheld within a serious set of questions. So if we do it right, false allegations are really rare. Prevention. Strong statements with policies, strong statements of commitment, describing it as illegal. I'm not going to go through all these, since you will get this PowerPoint, and I'm trying to get you time to ask questions. But I try to put in some specifics about what we might like in policies, because the policies need to be really specific, and most school district policies are not specific. A policy itself will not stop educator sexual misconduct, but it's a beginning for a lot of things. So these are some policy statements. There's a lot of things I want you to say. Supervision. We need administrators and others to walk into classrooms, walk through the building, listen to rumors and gossip. I can't tell you how many times I've heard an administrator say, "Oh yeah, I heard the kid saying something like that, but I can't act on rumor and gossip." Oh yes, you can, and you'd better, because you're not going to have a kid come in to you and say, I just want to tell you about what happened to me. That isn't the way it goes. And so if we don't, in education, understand that we need to listen to the pitter-patter of the kids' talk, we're not going to be able to understand what's going on. Warning signs, doors closed, windows covers up, students alone with the teacher. Before and after school, administrators forget to walk around during those times. Those are really good times to walk around and see, are there rooms where there are a teacher and kids in the room? Follow up on everything. People often don't follow up. They hear about it. A typical thing is somebody says, this teacher, I believe, is having some kind of weird relationship or doing something that I'm not sure what it is, but I think you ought to check into it with this child. Principal calls the teacher in and says, I've got somebody who said you might be doing something maybe sexual with this child. The teacher says, no, I don't know where that would come from. And the administrator says, okay, and that's it. Now, you think I'm kidding, but I'm not. That's where it ends. It's okay, that's it. We need to remind staff over and over again of expectations, what we expect, how we expect them to behave, and not with things like appropriate conduct. You can't imagine how many things just say we expect appropriate conduct. It's not enough. We need to tell them what appropriate conduct is. Don't assume, and educate. Educate all staff. Educate students, educate parents, work with local police departments. But what I want to focus on is just to say educate all staff. So we educate students, that's a peripheral. I don't think students should have to be responsible for their own safety, all right? And we don't do enough to make the adults responsible. So too many schools say, in order for me to investigate or do anything, the student has to come in and make a written complaint, and turn it in. And if the student doesn't do that, we don't move on it. So we have to get back to the notion that it's everybody's responsibility, and the adults have to be in charge. Educate, avoid one-shot training, work with programs. I really like the programs we saw today, which are integrated into a larger set of curriculum that you keep coming back to the issues. Don't assume that the mandated reporter training that schools might have is sufficient on this, because what we find is people have a disconnect between mandated reporter, which has to do with families out there, and people in the schools. And you need to really work with the community and talk with the community, and state and national level, work with law enforcement, train hearing officers when teachers are brought up on charges, work for laws that require and fund training, work for laws that require reporting and penalize those who fail to report, and that's that. All right.
I would have hated to have debated Dr. Shakeshaft. That was terrific. There's a place for you at our dinner table tomorrow night. I want you to talk to a couple daughters.